So welcome to the British Library. My name's John Fawcett. I have the privilege of looking after the public events programme here, but I'm also a massive Simple Minds fan. So from that first night, I think when Richard Skinner played Changeling on Late Night Radio 1 in, I think, 79 probably, and my life sort of was never quite the same after that. It's been a long road to this point, but I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome the band here tonight for this very special event. Now, the British Library, why the British Library? Is one of the world's greatest sound collections. We have over 7 million recordings preserved here for the public benefit. They're available to everybody to use and research from, and there's probably about 2 million audio recordings in there, including all of the Simple Minds back catalogue, and of course much else besides. So it's a very special home for music, and music events are one of the favourite things that we do. We've had amazing people on this stage, everybody from just last year, we had Joan Armatrading, Eddie Grant, orchestral manoeuvres in the dark. We've even had the likes of Johnny Rotten and the Buzzcocks here in the past. So lots of great things, but obviously tonight we've got some of the greatest, one of the greatest bands of the last few decades, something completely unique and special. So we're welcoming all of those online, watching around the world as well. We've got a huge online audience tonight, but you're all here tonight. Those of you who've got a book, that's great. I'm sorry we've now sold out of books, but please do buy one still. But those of you who've got one, they will be signing afterwards, of course. So tonight, Jim and Charlie will be speaking with the great Mariella Frostrup, a broadcaster, journalist, campaigner, who you probably all know very well, and a good friend of the boys as well. So please welcome to the stage Mariella Frostrup with Charlie Burchill and Jim Kerr.
This is slightly intimidating, as I was just saying to Jim and Charlie, because this is an audience that probably knows more about Jim and Charlie than I do after all my deep research, etc. I'm going to keep the introduction pretty short because this is a sellout event, and I'm suspicious that I doubt whether any of you wandered in, wafted in off the street tonight, just hoping for a warm, dry place to sit. In essence, we're here to investigate the story of two friends who met in a sandpit in Tory Glen, the dazzling high-rises, for those of you unaware, that rose from the kind of rubble of the crowded tenements of post-war Glasgow, and shared a dream to make their escape through the music that they loved to play. Jim Kerr and Charlie Burchill have enjoyed a bromance, a word not even in the lexicon, when they started out, that's lasted over 5 decades. It's a friendship that's carried them from grimy gigs in the local youth club to the biggest stadiums in the world as their dream became a reality. And of course, in the process, they brought the world Simple Minds.
Thanks to all.
Charlie, we've heard enough from Jim already this time. So I thought I'd start out just asking you, I mean, congratulations, first of all on the memoir, but why did you decide to do this book now? What was the sort of pivotal moment that tipped you into? Because I imagine for both of you, it's quite an uncomfortable thing to sort of undress in public, as it were. A bit.
Oh, Mario, I was dragged into this. No, the truth is, actually, you know, it's quite funny because I thought it was Graham who wrote the book's idea. And then Jim corrected me that it was his idea.
No, Graham corrected you. It was my idea.
Graham.
I was too modest to say.
No, of course.
But forgetting whose idea it was, what about the kind of timing of it? What made it feel like the moment to get retrоспective, which is something that I would not really accuse either of you of in general?
No, Mario, you know, I mean, simply put, it was, if we didn't do it, somebody would have done it, and, you know, we really wanted to we decided, look, if we're going to tell our story, maybe we should tell it, you know? And then we got Graham to tell it.
but under your guidance. You called the book's called Our Secrets Are the Same. I wondered, first of all, why that title? Because, I mean, as probably most people in this room will know, it's probably the title of your, dare I say, least successful album, or insofar as it didn't really come out, did it?
Obscure.
Obscure. Your most obscure album.
Obscure, yeah.
But also, are your secrets the same? Did you discover any differences of viewpoint in the process?
I think it was a little play on. It's not so much secrets, because we're not secretive types, to be honest, but I think given the length of time we've spent together, we do have more a kind of code, a communication, and we talk about it in the book. I mean, we know each other. In many ways, we know each other so well. It's just a muscle on Charlie's face has to change, and I think, oh, fuck.
I was feeling that right then.
Right, or you know, we just kind of, it's funny, we're here to talk about our story, but we're really good with silence as well. We can go for long periods, but we just know what the other is thinking now. It's one of these odd things. So it was a kind of play on that. It is Our Secrets Are the Same. It sounds nice. It is the title of a song that we're currently in the process of reworking, because it didn't do very well the first time, as you quite rightly say. It's a good title. You know, sometimes you just go, that's a good title. Let's see if we can build a book around it.
Is that something you've employed with your songwriting as well? That's a good title.
Very often, very often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very
Can you write a song without a title? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question, actually. Well, you know, I'll tell you how it works, Mariella. It's kind of usually a bit like, there may be a bit of music, and then Jim takes it and kind of, builds a picture. And then from there, I get all this information, and then it's like, oh, right, okay, that's what it's about. And, you know, it kind of works a bit like that, you know, backwards and forwards.
I didn't really mean to go there at all. I'm going to do that much later on and talk to you about process and things, but it was the title thing.
The titles, I think there's something about it. I mean, the fact that where we're not alike, of course, is that Charlie's a musician, I'm not. And his way of communicating to the world through the instruments, you know, first thing, if you go around to his place in the morning, which is actually usually my place because he rents them off me, I'm the landlord. So if I go around to my place
and find Charlie
to see the tenant and make sure he's been keeping the place clean and stuff,
I'm squatting.
It could be 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and he'll be sitting, a cup of coffee, but just as close as I am just now. There'll be a guitar or there'll be a keyboard or whatever, and that's his way of being, understanding the world, communicating with the world. In my case, I'm usually up a wee bit earlier than Charlie as well, Mariella, and I'm usually writing, reading, or whatever, so can't remember what the question was.
Me neither, but it doesn't matter. That was very interesting. Thank you.
We sort of, you know, we're different beasts. We're a two-headed monster.
We had kind of digressed, and we were talking about songwriting, which is way too early, because I want to just talk more generally about the book and the fact that it's subtitled Friendship and Fame. And I wondered which you found hardest to write about, hardest to explore in the book, Charlie.
I think, well, definitely the friendship would be the hardest thing, Mariella, because, I mean, you know, the trouble with something like this is that we really don't talk about our past, or, you know, we're just too busy doing stuff. And then when you have to sit down and think about it and go over it, you know, you discover a lot of stuff you never realised. And like, for example, in the introduction, you know, you mentioned that we met in a sandpit in Torregoyen, and I can't remember it.
I obviously made a great impression.
I've got a totally different version of it, you know, for example, you know. And so I did learn a lot from it, you know, you find stuff.
But it's interesting you say you've got a different version of it, because actually in the book, you know, there's a lot of interplay between, you know, the memories that you're both, you know, recording. were there things that you remembered entirely differently, and did they hit the dustbin because of that?
I mean, well, one big thing, and again, probably jumping the gun, because I presume you might come to it later on.
I'll try and keep up.
For instance, the success of Don't You Forget About Me, which none of us could ever see coming, and so it goes to #1, and we have great jumping up and down, kind of, but it wasn't our song. And we were working on this album, and the album was sounding great, and all the songs were fitting together. Looking at it now in the world we're in, a #1 song, you have to put it on the album. I mean, you'd be insane not to put it on the album. And Charlie blames me in the book for losing a couple of million quid just like that. That's why he has to rent from me. He blames me for that, and there's these visions of, you know, struggles with the record company and midnight call, please, can you put it on? It didn't happen like that, and that didn't happen. Back in those days, you're too young, Mariella.
Hardly. We can talk about that in a bit too.
It was quite common to have soundtrack albums, and they were just big soundtrack albums, and it would, to me, it was like, to put the song on the album would be like taking a chapter from your current book on the menopause and putting it in our book. Frankly,
I think it would benefit from a bit more about the menopause. Menopause.
Being Scotsman, you can imagine Mariella's not getting paid too much tonight, so we thought we'd just give her a plug there. But you get my drift. It just. But lo and behold, all the years later, the world has changed. Capitalism's not quite the enemy we once thought it was. And it's found a home in the new rebooted version of Once Upon a Time. But anyway, the point being, Charlie sort of remembers, he has a perception that I don't think existed. And same with the other guys in the band. You know, everyone now has a story to tell. Everyone in this room has a story to tell. But it's the perception, and the perceptions that are interesting.
Yeah, and I think, you know, memory is subjective.
That's right.
We can, you know, all be in this room and tomorrow describing it in a completely different way.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking that already.
Yeah.
Let's try and see how subjective it is. Well, it's already proved to be when it comes to the early years in Glasgow, the sandpit that Charlie doesn't remember, and just how much Glasgow at that time shaped the band and shaped who you became. Because, I mean, I don't know, I can't really see the age range of people in the room, but Jim and I were just
They're young like us.
Young like us. Jim and I were just talking about that period. You know, I moved over from Ireland, ferry from Dublin around the same time as you guys were starting the band, and you know, Dublin and Glasgow, there was no hope. There was nothing. No. You couldn't imagine what you were going to do with your life because there was nothing to do, you know. And I think maybe particularly with Glasgow, which I think, as you said, was the...
Well, especially Dublin, man. You only had Guinness and poetry.
Yeah, we had poetry and hope.
We had the steam engine, we had coal mining, we had shipbuilding. Actually, we had nothing because, as you quite rightly say, the walls were closing in for the city because deindustrialization, and although we were brought up in, still is a very proud city, and it's managed to reinvent itself a gazillion times, and Glasgow always will, as Dublin will. They're hustlers. They'll always get it. But the conversations around the dinner table then, working class, everyone in Glasgow was working class, with no distinction, was that people like us, especially as this night wears on, we'll be aware this is all very boy-zone and very masculine and all that. But that's the world we were brought up in. But the conversation was that people like, well, no one was an artist, so forget that. You might have had your cousin who your mum or your granny would say, oh, okay, you want to hear him on the accordion? He's lovely with a big curly hair and he's really talented. Subtext, you're not. and the stats then were, and it's pretty amazing, if you were from a family whose mum and dad were manual workers, the chances of going to university was 3%. That's just the way it was. We didn't know anyone who went to university. So it was very much this, you know, working man's world. But the working man's world in the city we were in was kind of over, and no one knew what was going to be next. So it was against that backdrop of a fierce pride, but also kind of on its knees.
Charlie, I think you're probably one of the only people I've ever come across in the world who benefited from smoking. Not you specifically, but your mum bought your first guitar, I think, with the coupons she got from Embassy.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, you know, you're like...
But it sounds like they were encouraging of what you wanted to do, which must have been hard for them because they were looking at a very tough world with not much opportunity for you out there. Or do you think that made the idea of you being a musician easier for them?
You know, I think I'm still surprised by it, Mariella, to be honest. Both our parents, you know, because, I mean, really, the backdrop really was you had to get a job and a trade and all that stuff. And I don't really know, you know, why they encouraged it, you know, just this thing that... Because, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it really was like a pipe dream, you know, and there was no question about it. There was never any resistance. They were just like, you know, I was like, I'm dying to get a guitar. And she was like... and it appeared...
Although Glasgow was built on tobacco money, so there is a connection. I actually just read them. I think I know why she got him a guitar, because a lot of the mothers, it was good if you had someone in the family who played something, because that was a big part of the entertainment. A Friday, Saturday night, if your cousin could play the accordion, or somebody had a banjo, or one of the boys or girls had a guitar. That's how people entertained, and I think that I knew Charlie's mum, and I think it was a big thing to have a son who could play Michael Row the Boat Ashore, or yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I just got Flower of Scotland. Your first band, Bieber Rom, short-lived, I think, fair to say, and your first gig, I think, was at like a children's party or something, and you played Heroin by Velvet Underground.
But we only played Velvet Underground songs.
Yeah, but it was Christmas and we thought we'd play a slow one.
But I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking about what you talked about earlier, which was to do with Don't You and not putting it on the album, you know, which obviously, as you say, is utter madness. And also perhaps opening Live Aid with your set in...
with heroin.
With heroin again. No, with a song that nobody had heard.
Yeah.
You know, and I wondered how much those decisions that might, in retrospect, look different or less sensible, but were actually part of the kind of Glasgow upbringing and the sort of absolute determination that you wouldn't be pushed around and you would do things as you saw fit. You're nodding, Charlie. I don't know if Jim is or not, so I'll go to you first.
Well, yeah, probably, Mario. Probably. I mean, you know, everybody, especially when you're, you know, young guys in the band, you do have a manifesto, don't you? And it's kind of a bit like, you know, there's parameters of things that you would do and you don't do. I mean...
Or not.
Yeah, maybe. but Jim can explain it much better, particularly that song, because...
That's why I've got a gig. Jim can explain it much better. I don't know.
But it's not just about that song, obviously. It's
there's a thing...
mindset.
All through our career, there's been these, you know, hands of fate that just when we needed them the most, we think turned up. And one of the first hands of fate, I think the very first was, of course, was the Sandpit, because if we hadn't met each other, I'd be in AC/DC, or I would be in, you know, I'd be in Roxy or something like that. I'm stuck with him.
Charlie would be in the sandpit still.
But the big thing was this thing that seemed to just come overnight, this thing called punk. And still in my heart, when people say, what's your favourite music? There will always be punk rock was the thing, because apart from the music itself, which obviously we grabbed onto the tails of that, it was the punk ethic where suddenly it was like somebody had given you permission to speak. Because again, not to lather too much on the working class thing, but that is, it would be like Martin Scorsese, you know, talking about Little Italy. We have to talk about that. That's where we're from. People from our neck of the woods didn't decide to be artists. They didn't decide to be filmmakers. They didn't decide they were going to start record labels. They didn't decide they were going to globe-trotting bands. They didn't decide they were going to have fanzines and such. But this punk thing came along, primarily with the music, charging it. But everything that went with it suddenly gave us this feeling of anyone can give it a go. Which is true, anyone can give it a go. But that didn't seem, prior to that, people would, you would have felt mad. Because there was no one along the road whose uncle had been in a band and been on Top of the Pops, or whose uncle had made a little film, or it just didn't happen. So I think that was the thing, that it wasn't so much where, hey, we're from Glasgow and we'll show you. It was more, this punk rock thing came, and with it somehow gave you the opportunity to infuse with belief. We can get up there on Saturday night and make a racket, and who knows what it'll lead to. And that's still pretty much what we do. When you make music, when we're sitting in there, obviously we're getting charged by what we hear, but you've no idea if Joe Blow's going to like it or whatever. But that kind of belief that I like it, so why not? Someone else might like it. That infused us.
You said, I'm going to paraphrase it, but you said that, you know, a lot of kids, their dreams end at the end of their street. But
yeah.
For you and Charlie, your dreams started at the end of the street. How much did Glasgow, and then we'll move on from Glasgow, but just Glasgow at that time also shape the vision of the band and everything? Because, I mean, it was unusual, you know, like Citizens Theatre was going then, which was an incredible experimental theatre, you know, 50p a ticket. So, you know, people could afford, instead of £500 a ticket like it is now, you know, you could go to the theatre, which I know you did. You were watching films. All of the imagery and everything that's come along with Simple Minds and grown with it feels like it's rooted in that period.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to say, thanks everyone for coming tonight. We're really delighted you've all came. We're delighted Mariella's here. And to be in the British Library, of all places as well, because whenever you talk to bands, or people that were in bands, or just people who like music of our generation, inevitably their stories begin, their teenage stories, and it's all centred around record shops. Charlie and I's story really began in the library, and we probably spoke more about it in the recently released documentary, where I remember, I mean, Charlie is the most avid reader that I know, and I've got this image of it. We were talking about it earlier, on the early days, before you could go with your Kindle or go with your whatever. Charlie always had this brown leather bag full of books. He thinks his back's knackered with a guitar. It's the books. and same with me from the age. I remember my dad had 5, and the public baths and the library were right next to each other. So on a Friday or a Saturday, please don't frown us, we had the weekly bath. and then into the library where we would get all the usual, the Tom Sawyers or the Enid Blytons and such. And then, but I remember my dad saying to me, and it was a big deal, the libraries then, like a lot of the libraries in Britain, they were financed by a Scotsman, Andrew Carnegie, who was, he was the sort of Bill Gates of his time. Steel magnate from Dunfermline in Scotland and became the richest guy in America and such. And he financed, I can't remember how many libraries, and it wasn't just in the UK, but what an amazing thing. He financed all these public libraries. And one of the libraries was in Calder Street, which was where my dad took to me. I remember him saying to me, because the image was so great, you know, you had to, you know, fill in, you just started school, so you could write your name and your address, and you got your ticket. And he said to me, do you know what this is? This is a golden ticket. And this is a golden, do you know how many kids would love to, kids around the world would love to have, this is a golden ticket, you should appreciate this. And I've been a reader ever since. Charlie, as I said, when he's not doing jigsaws, you know, so our music, as much as it's been infused with all the records we loved, it's been infused by the books, the writers, the art, the films, the movies. I mean, one of the things I'll tell you a story we're so kind of proud of, because it is still a bit of a rock and roll hustle with us. And a few years ago, we were offered, it was Putin days, but it was early on in, and we were offered money to go and play a corporate gig in Russia at the time, and we were like, no chance, no. How much? and it kind of kept going up and up. And then finally the thing that made us do it, we're like, because we also share the same favourite book with Master and Margarita by Bulgakov. If we can get into, because they still have, it's a quasi-museum, the actual room where he wrote the book, and the desk and the chair is still there.
There's the gardens as well, where the bench.
And we said, if we can get someone to organise to take us around all the places in the book starts in the bench and Patriarch Park. And we just had the most glorious time. The money was nice, but this is great being in a band when you can get hustles like this. So that was our version of going to Graceland. And that's, so getting to your point, it was always the arts. Although, as you quite rightly say, Glasgow then was not the Glasgow we know now. The Citizens Theatre was the sort of, Glasgow was a bit of a cultural desert then. That was the shining light.
Did you ever get a Kindle, Charlie? Or do you still carry it?
I did, Mariella, yeah. I'm on the iPad now.
So modern, so modern. Let's go on to talk about the beginnings of Simple Minds. Well, first of all, the name. I mean, probably everyone in this room does know where it came from, but would you tell me?
Charles?
Well, it came from a David Bowie song, Mario. It was Gin, So Simple Minded. Everybody had names at that time. It was Jim who came up with it, obviously, and it was everybody had, there was all those names, Talking Heads, and you you had those kind of names. And Jim, I remember Jim just saying, "Well, what are we going to call this band?" And I was like, "Well, don't ask me. I've got no chance of anyway."
I think we kind of got it wrong in the sense that. Again, from that library, probably read something, and it would something about the height of enlightenment would be, simplicity. Simplicity of thought would get you there. But everyone went, it just sounds stupid, Simple Minds. I mean, you're daft. It sounds, someone who's simple-minded is daft. But it stuck. What can we say? And it did come from a David Bowie.
And it served you very well. Your first album, Life in a Day, was recorded I mean, there was a single first, and there was... But I'm conscious that we haven't got 3 hours, which I'd like to have. So it was recorded in Abbey Road, which you would imagine, you know, iconic studio, home of the Beatles. You'd imagine that that would be the most amazing thing that could happen to any band making their first album. But that wasn't the case for Simple Minds,
Kind of
was
like
it?
the daftest thing you could do, you know, because, I mean, considering how much it cost, and you're, as a new band, you've got a really limited budget, and we were in Abbey Road, and we were like, wow. And on one hand, it was fantastic to be there with John Leckie, who worked with the Beatles, and you know, that was a great experience, Mariella. But at the same time, I think we were just so conscious. It was like, you know, this is us. We've just used up the entire budget, you know, and
Charlie's careful of the pennies.
Oh, and you're not.
That came to me later.
That wasn't the total non sequitur that it seemed, asking about Life in a Day, because when I met you both first was your second album.
Yeah.
Reel to Reel Cacophony, and that was also with John Leckie, but in a totally different environment, which I think you found suited you much better, which was this farmhouse in the middle of Wales, Monmouthshire, which had proper studios just up the road, but they decided to record in the farmhouse and hired the Rolling Stones mobile studio, which for some reason at the ripe age of 16 and a half maybe, I was the tape offer. and so I arrived at this godforsaken, windswept farmhouse in the middle of Wales with this bunch of Glaswegians, forming, not formed, I would argue.
Oh, but you could handle it.
And up the road, in the studio, were two of your complete musical idols. You don't mention it in the book, but I remember.
Is it not mentioned?
No, you mentioned it in the documentary, but not in the book.
Oh.
David Bowie and Iggy Pop were recording a mile up the road from us, weren't they? And in fact,
Yeah.
we visited.
Yeah.
I remember.
Well, some things never change. So Mariella, the only female there was, apart from the band and John Leckie, probably about 10 men in the countryside, nothing else around, just Mariella. And she ran rings round all of us, as she's doing tonight. And you know, she took no crap from anyone. She was delightful. What she was, and again, another plug for her book. She was she was a great cook, and she decided, because the food we thought the food is terrible, and you said, you know, maybe try something, and I always remember that Mariella was a great cook.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But let's go back to musical idols, and I mean, I presume at that time Bowie and Iggy Pop would have been right up there for you guys.
Big time area, yeah. I mean, Iggy came into the studio, he came into the front room that we had. He was actually looking for drugs. He was surprise.
He was looking for Mariella. He was looking for Mariella.
And lo and behold, and honestly, it wasn't planted, but the first two albums that we had in a big pile of albums were Lust for Life and The Idiot. And he was like, you guys are cool, you know, and we were like, fantastic. And then he used to come and visit us all the time. Took us into the studio and beside.
You sang on one of the songs on that album.
Yeah, I mean, it's so surreal. We were talking earlier about perceptions and memories, and you know, you do in the band. We've got so many stories, and inevitably some of them grow arm and legs, but that one hasn't. The idea of being in. Iggy was already there. We turned up in the Welsh countryside. There was two studios. There was the big studio and the small studio. We were in the small, and who's in the big studio? And they said, Iggy Pop. And just the idea of Iggy Pop, Detroit, and being in the Welsh countryside, we thought, this can't be. And Charlie is quite right. I think he was meant to be, I always get them on the wagon, off the wagon, whatever it is. But someone had said, you know, we turned up then with goodies in the countryside. We turned up, we knew we were going away camping for a few weeks, and we brought goodies. And he heard about that, and he started coming in, and he couldn't be friendlier. And then he just said out, it was almost out the corner of his mouth, but this time he was Jim, and yeah, Johnny, he's, well, fucking Bowie's coming tomorrow. And we were like, what? Yeah, Bowie's coming tomorrow. See what he's got. Maybe he'll bring goodies as well. And we just, it was so unlikely that these people whose Charlie's music we'd grown up with and adored were going to be in the Welsh countryside. And do you remember when they came in that night? There was a warning. They said, oh, they're going to pop over later. And I remember this because, again, it's just when you think of Iggy, we were used to. He'd been in every night. And Bowie was wearing a black jumpsuit. And the thing was, and he already looked a bit kind of pie-eyed. He had a can of Heineken, I remember that, and a huge lump of cheese. And I kind of said, and he was standing trying to be cool with the cheese. And it was a great, I said, what's the cheese for? And he went, I got the munchies. And you're right, then they had this song and they wanted a sort of football chorus, and you would have been around the microphone as well.
You wouldn't have let me anywhere near the microphone. If you've heard me sing, it's not good.
And suddenly we found ourselves, and all these years later, even telling it just now, none of that is an exaggeration. That doesn't have arm and legs. But it's been one of the great things about the book, because it's looking back. We've so much of our life, there's been a lot of pragmatism, but so much is so mysterious. The most unlikely things have happened, and things that even now, use a corny phrase, we have to pinch ourselves. Did that really happen? In fact, we're so blasé about it, it's not even in the book. Although there is another story of Bowie and the Mafia in the book, but that's the kind of life we've had.
One of the interesting things about the book, I mean, you mentioned having your little care pack in Rockfield. You didn't share, by the way.
No.
Thanks, guys. No. I don't remember drugs at all. In the book, you mentioned briefly, like, you and Charlie taking acid in Glasgow, right, in the early days and things. But this is a book that, I mean, anyone coming to it looking for sex, drugs, and rock and roll, even in terms of lifestyle, might feel a little bit famished. But it suggests, actually, which I think is something you'll agree with, that those weren't the things that would... You know, there were loads of bands who were fueled by all of those substances and addictions or whatever. But I don't think really, even at the point of your probably most debauched years, that was really what was driving the band. You know, it felt like you were constantly... I mean, I don't know if it's because Jim is so impatient and a hard taskmaster. Like, you always move on, don't you? And you know, there's a sense that whatever you'd just done was never quite enough, and the next thing was going to be the thing. Charlie, you've had to live with that for like 50 years. How's it been for you?
I know, Mariella, that's true. I mean, we did have that, but we do have that thing. You know, it's kind of like, you know, maybe it's the background, maybe it's a Glasgow thing. You know, you always feel you're just not good enough. You need to get a bit better. And I think to be honest with the stuff that we were taking, the acid, we didn't take that much, but it was, I mean, you know.
I think he's taking it now.
It's well enough. It's well enough. But I didn't think we even thought it was like drugs. We just thought it was like
manna from heaven.
Absolutely. It was technical, and it was like, wow, this is amazing, you know. And because we never really get into any big, hardcore drug thing, you know. And the acid was fantastic. It was
Charlie tie-dye Burchill.
So what was it driving you? What was the thing? What was the engine?
We love the sound. We still love the sound.
But if you look at your discography, I mean, for the first 4 years, I think that it's like an album a year. Yeah. And then there's very few years where that gets protracted until you get to the point where you're maybe
a sense of purpose. You know, if you have a thing, and if you have especially if you're a thing that you're any good at, or people think you're good at, what an amazing thing. And it never felt, there's been records where we felt, God, that turned out really well, but it's who we are, as I said, and it's the same with everyone we work with. And we love not only of course, the thing about Simple Minds, as much as we talk about the records and the songs, and nothing possible without them, but the band. Simple Minds is a live thing, and the great people we've worked with through the years, from the early days right up to the killer band we have now, all these engines that we've strapped on through the years, just maybe where we were losing our mojo, or kind of losing interest, or getting bored with ourselves, because you can't go this length of time where it's always on the up. You know, you have periods where, and we certainly did have a period where I guess you might get to Sicily at some point, but by the mid-90s, or the new century coming up, you know, all the new heroes were coming over the hill, the Stone Roses and the Happy Mondays, and such is the way with pop music, such is the way with fashion. If you've been, you know, one of the big shots of one generation, you're almost guaranteed to be getting it in the neck by the next gen, because they're bored with you, they've had enough, they don't want their big brothers and big sisters music, they want their own. Great, but how do you give up being Charlie Burchill or Jim Kerr when that's what you've done? Well, I came up with a concept. I thought, I'll be a bit like Hemingway. I'll go
fishing.
I'll be a fisherman in Sicily, and the fates will take care of themselves. But it was a period. Seriously, we had no record deal, we had no management, we had no publishing. It was closing in, and thankfully, the one thing, it's just not in our nature, the one thing we never fell into at that moment, we didn't like it, of course we didn't, but we never get embittered. You quite often meet a lot of people they think they've had success, or they've had a break, and they think it's always going to be there, or they think the world owes them something. It just dawned on us that, you know, all of our heroes had also gone through periods of, I mean, when I was talking about yesterday, when we played in Live Aid in America, the whole thing backstage, no one was caring about old Bob Dylan in the corner. There's Madonna's here, or Milli Vanilli are here.
That was us.
Charlie got autographs. And you know, that's just the way it was. People who we couldn't lace their boots. Johnny Cash ended up doing supper clubs before he was, you know, John Lennon stayed at home baking bread. Charlie's quite good at baking bread. There's a period where you just got to head for the hills and see what happens. And in our case, primarily mine, but then Charlie, the hills just happened to be this fucking volcano. And I couldn't get further away from, I thought, I've got to get away from this existence. And a whole new, I thought I was going down to bury myself. We ended up getting reborn, in a sense. And that just tied in at the start of the century, and been motoring ever since.
I mean, Jim's described it very succinctly there. Well, not that succinctly. But nevertheless. But he says something in the book, and it really struck me. I think you might say it in the documentary as well, which is just about, you know, you're on your way to play a gig in a pub or whatever, and you pass the stadium you used to play in. Yeah. And that's a huge thing, you know. You know, how would you describe your sense of that, and what made you want to keep going and go through it all again? Because it's like, you know, having to start not from the beginning, obviously, at all. I mean, you've got extremely loyal fans for a start, but you know.
Yeah, Mariella, it's tough. I mean, you know, but at the same time, I think, to be absolutely honest, we didn't know what else to do. We don't know. You know, I certainly couldn't do, you know, change and do some other thing, you know. It's in your DNA, I suppose, and you find that out after you've done a lifetime in it, practically. And, I mean, those moments there, I think I just blanked it, to be honest, and kind of just, you know, imagined that it was, you know, there was still a future ahead. But I think the main thing was really just the fact that that's all you knew what, you know, it was the only thing you knew what to do. And we still talk about it a bit like the old blues guys and stuff like that. You know, they you know, for them, there was never a question about, you know, I don't even think they would ever think about making money or anything. It was just what they did. And I think actually, you know, a lot of people are like that, and they probably find that out about themselves.
I mean, again, the thing I was talking about earlier about these different hands of fate that turned up just as that was happening, and, you know, this other thing turns up called the internet and social media, and we might not have, you know, we'd lost a lot of our popularity, but it's nice that you said there, all around the world, we still had a few 100,000 fans who we could talk to directly, and we could, it kept the, you know, the flame hadn't completely gone out, but there was still, you know, wherever it was, Australia or all through Europe, there were still people that wanted the music, and then patience is a virtue. The phone started ringing. You know, if you kind of, another good story of my dad's, he said later on when we got this, regained the popularity of a song, he said, it was a great way of putting it. He said, we'd just been playing a couple of nights at the Hydro in Glasgow, 14,000 people a night and all that, and he said, the Simple Minds thing's it's coming back again, isn't it? And I said, yeah, going good, yeah. Where do you kind of put that, don't you? Where do you think? Because you were nowhere for a while there, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, so how? I said, you know, we've got this thing, whether it's fashion or art or whatever. You know, one minute you can be everything, and then no one wants to know. But if you've done good work, you've done quality work, and you're patient, there's a chance that a new generation will come along and they'll find new meaning in it, or you might even be considered authentic.
Oh, nice.
And there's a chance, and whether you look at, you know, design, and he's sitting like this, whether you look at design or architecture, wherever, there's always references to the past. So a new generation come along and they find it, and it kind of gets a popularity again. And he went, a bit like Hush Puppies. He said, everybody's fucking wearing Hush Puppies again now. I've seen people 4 times they've been coming and going, and I went, a bit like Hush Puppies, yes. A bit like Hush Puppies.
Could I take you to the music just for one question, just in terms of, you know, 21 albums, I think, at last count. Is there one, or even one song, that to you is like perfection? Like you think of it and you think that was it. That was, everything was right.
No.
we call that the Kenny Dalglish school of response. You get some that, no.
I love Kenny Dalglish. I became a Liverpool supporter just because I love Kenny Dalglish. Sorry, didn't want to be controversial. But I did want to ask you just one thing about the enormous journey. Because as a kid, you had a terrible stammer.
Yes.
And one of the things about singing was that you didn't stammer when you sang. now obviously you don't stammer when you speak either, but having a stammer suggests that for you to be the front man of a band and to then go from being like part of a band to that kind of stadium thing that happened after Don't You Forget About Me and, of course, New Gold Dream, the album without Don't You on it, and so on. That's a huge trip to go on. And I wondered how much you had to think about it and work yourself into it, and how much was just a sort of natural progression. It feels like it must have taken a lot of courage at times.
Astonishing.
I mean, again, swept up in the madness because, going back to what we were saying earlier, without the punk thing that made everyone think, I think, I was going to say everyone felt they could be in a punk band, but I think I remember, and I like him a lot, talking to Mick Hucknall, and I said, you know, were you never in a punk band? And he said something like, red hair and freckles. I don't think so. At school, everyone had something, you know, and if it wasn't a stammer, you had glasses or you had freckles or whatever, so people would kind of take the piss. So I didn't get bullied or any of that stuff. But as soon as I went outside my circle, I wouldn't speak to strangers for obvious reasons, because, you know, people would. It was quite pronounced at the time. And again, I remember, I didn't think it would be any big deal too much, but I remember my dad come in once, and Joe's here, my best pal, along with Charlie. And my dad thrown me a pair of boxing gloves when I was young, and he went, you might need these. And he was, I didn't actually, but he was referring to the fact, you know, you're going to have to deal with this. But the one thing that when you're not talking, and I talk quite a bit now, when you're not talking, the good thing when you're a kid, you're taking things in, you know, and you're noticing things. And I realised years later, I think if you're going to be a writer, any kind of writing, details and notice, to be able to stand back from it. And even on tour just now, it's a different thing. I'll go for days where I ask any girls here that work with us, and I don't speak. I don't speak a lot. It just goes back to being a kid where I'll just go off on my own, and I'm in my own head a lot of the time. But then it comes to time to do your frontman duties, and then it's all about being extrovert, and it's all about, God knows where you get the gall, look at me, because what are you doing when you go on a stage? And especially in that space, I think it's a kind of hallowed space between the audience and the band. Although I'm in the band, there is this space where, certainly in my mind, it's how I deal. You kind of get in and get the audience to feel they're part of the band, and get the band to feel they're part of the audience. And
another of the interesting things, I'm going a tiny bit over time because I think, you know, 5 minutes, who cares?
Are we gone already?
Yeah. You know, you talk a lot about your friendship. This book is about your friendship, the enduring nature of it, the fact that you can read what Charlie's thinking through a movement or whatever. And I was really struck by, the fact that you never seem to have talked about anything emotional ever to each other. And you saying, I think it was after, or at the time, or after you'd split up with Chrissy Hind, and like you were going to the studio to do an album, and you didn't want it to be full of like those sad love songs. And I thought, with most musicians, most singers dream of splitting up so that they can write that album.
Yeah.
Have you consciously avoided emotion for 50 years, the two of you? And how do you do that? Because that's a particular skill set.
That's a skill, isn't it?
And why do you want to avoid? Do you think that your songs are imbued with emotion? It's just not your personal.
I mean, we were brought up with a terrible thing. That thing you've heard, and it was my mum. Literally, my mum I loved. She was the greatest. But she just said, because it was, you know, boys don't cry. Boys don't cry. Don't cry. And and also in Charlie talks about it really well in the book. We had such different roles. In my family, I was the big brother. In Charlie's family, he's a wee brother. And in fact, the rest of the band, they were all wee brothers. There's a photograph of me. It's our first ever holiday. We went to Dublin on our first ever holiday, and I've got a photograph of my wee brother, 2 years younger than me. And you hold on to him. You're the big brother. You have to make sure everything's okay. And so this thing of don't cry, and don't cry. In Charlie's case, I think it's slightly different. He's so polite. He's a very, very polite Charlie. He's the most polite guy. Just a couple of whiskies, maybe. A wee bit less patient with things, but he's the most polite guy. He would feel he was boring you or being self-indulgent. I mean, we went through divorces together. I don't remember. I think once Charlie said, he said, fuck, I'm going through this, man. What's it like? I said, it's the worst ever. It's awful. Okay, I know that. And it is. Even when it's good. But it's just the way it was. But we just have this unspeaking way of dealing with it. And even right now, like everyone in the room, we've had such charmed lives, but right now we've got things in our lives that are testing family and family members and the thing that we all go through. But we just, it just doesn't come out. It just doesn't come out that way. And it's the same we always laugh about, meeting people and giving them a hug and stuff. Don't start that malarkey. And we never.
It's a bit weird.
At the end of a tour, we'll have done and it's been amazing, and we'll just go, see you later.
No, but there's a reason for that, because we know we're going to see each other 10 minutes later.
Maybe. But
surely you're sick of the sight of each other as well. I mean, that's not to say there haven't been arguments. In fact, he names you Charlie Piranha.
Oh, yeah.
In the book. But like, it seems that you argue over set lists and whether it was a good gig or not.
The biggest fight we've ever had in our life was over a set list. In fact, the BBC did a documentary on bands splitting up, and they put us in there because we were like the one exception to the rule, and I had to think about it, and I thought, this is a bit weird. I mean,
there's been a couple of headlock moments. But no, I mean, we usually have one classic fight a year, and it'll be but just sometimes you're on the wrong page. Something, and you're just on the wrong page, and then trying to describe what the issue is. It's not even the issue that becomes the thing. Someone will just use the wrong word, derogatory, and then it'll be, what did you say? And we had a great fight recently where it was on the terrace in Sicily. And we were screaming, it was about a piece of music. We were screaming so loud. And this takes something when you see Sicilians gathering in the street. People were standing eating like, and we were just going at it about a piece of music. When it died down, we're both terribly, terribly embarrassed about it. But on the other hand, a second later, I thought, how great to be this long in the tooth and still so passionate about it. Will we care enough? We're so into it. Like, why can't you see that? Why can't you see this? So it's also great to have that kind of passion. The great thing about our fights is we end up embarrassed, and then the next day it's forgotten about.
Charlie, why do you always end up living in the same places?
Oh, it's weird, man.
I mean, it is a little bit weird.
It's basically because I usually wait for Jim to buy a place and then I move in. That's really why, And I've done it about maybe 7 or 8 times. But honestly, there was no design whatsoever. In actual fact, I mean, I lived in Rome for a long time, and you know, Jim was in Nice, and there have been like huge amounts of our life where we've been apart. But on the other hand, Killiney, as you know, we lived across the road from each other. Torry Glen, obviously, where we grew up. And then finally we're in the same street in Taormina, and I know why we're there. It's because Jim wants to keep his eye on me, making sure that I'm working in the morning. That's why.
So what would you be keeping? Because I want to know, well, I suppose whether this enduring friendship has taught you any lessons in relationships. Because whilst you've been very successful with your enduring friendship, perhaps less so with romantic relationships over the years, and even other band members who may have departed along the way. So has your friendship and the fact that you've managed to sustain it like this, has it taught you anything that...
Yeah, it has, Mario. Yeah, I mean, again, like for example, with regards to the bands or the members or, band members, I mean, Jim and I never ever felt like we were some, kind of a duo inside this thing. We just thought we were all part of the gang. And then, like, some people would say, well, you two are always at it. You're always colluding, which was a mystery to Jim and I, because we never, for once, ever thought about that. But I think then, in later years, we kind of realised that, it takes so much to keep a friendship together, but to keep it together inside a working environment is really tough. I mean, and like, for example, Jim mentioned the fantastic band that we have now, and Sarah and Teresa. And the truth is that sometimes even more important than the music is actually the personalities and finding everybody getting it to work, the chemistry. And that takes so long to do it. And that's what we've learned, is how to find the right people who are like our culture and our, and share the same values.
And you have got an extremely exciting band. And in fact, I think, again, I might be quoting you, but you said that saves you from being like a bunch of old relics going out on stage. How...
A bunch of jowly old blokes. Well, we're still that, but, I mean...
Do you know, I got the address wrong. I didn't look at the thing properly where I was meant to be coming, and I thought it was at the British Museum. Oh. I thought that's so brave of them. That's like hardcore. But how much is the new band?
It's the last time we do it.
How much is the new band? I mean, you've got a couple of extremely gorgeous women in the audience with us tonight. So that is very good news. How much did you actually think about that, or is it just that hand of fate, good fortune again?
No, we stole them. We stole them. We stole them from other places. I can't give any names, Brian Ferry. We got them on a Bosman at first, then we paid them more, and they're just... they're just the whole band. And from day one, McNeil and Forbes and Brian McGee. I mean, it is the foundation that we have to give it all, and then the ring around a band. A band doesn't just exist. Not only that time when we're on our knees, the walls are closing in, and good fortune came. Ian Grenfell, our manager, we found then. It all brought new vitality. And the last tour that we only finished a month ago, I think arguably we played to more people than we ever did. The answer, the question you were asking, Charlie, what did we learn? We learned, fucking hang in.
And now here you are, holed up in Taormina, this glorious town, slumming it. Though I have to say, you can take the man to Taormina, but you can't take Glasgow out of him, I think, because you sponsored the local team, didn't you, for a couple of years? And the only problem was they had blue kit. And But well, maybe Jim will explain why that was really problematic.
Well, in Glasgow, there's two teams. Our team plays in green and white, and our nemesis play in blue. And could you sponsor the kids' football team that's been going since the 1920s? And I said, what colour's the blue? I said, I'm not sure about that. Maybe we can do a deal here. But yeah, we have a fantastic life there. It was funny, literally, I guess it was 3 days ago, Charlie was in the back of my scooter this time, and we're piling up the hill, the rain's coming down, and
we couldn't quite make it up. we were getting it. It was a bit like, you know.
Those Vespers are made for live young men.
Easy rider.
Or not.
Pissing ourselves laughing, and no, we're really having a great time. We always have, but we're really having a great time, and this is part of it as well, Mariella. So.
And now that you've discovered the joys of a tour where you don't have to stand up and expend loads of energy, and
Yeah.
Is this the end of Simple Minds, or is this?
No. It's only the beginning, right?
Well, I don't want us to be thrown out, so thank you so much to Charlie Burchill and Jim Kerr.
Mariella.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, pal.
No wonder you keep playing with
Thank you so much for being here. Everybody watching online, Jim and Charlie will be outside signing books. And thank you so much, Mariella, for a wonderful hosting tonight.